as we get started, we'll introduce ourselves, and Clint, I'll let you go first, and then I'll just start here.
I'm Clint Stivers. I'm the Assistant Director, Writing and Communications Programs here in the Knoll Studio. Before I got here, I spent 3 years doing a postdoctoral teaching fellowship at Georgia Tech, where I gained some experience working on ePortfolios. I'll talk about that a bit later. But ePortfolios are very exciting. In working with Rusty and Jennifer over the last year since I've been here, we've learned a lot. We've improved a lot of things, and we found some resources that I'll talk about later that are fundamental, I think, if you're interested in introducing ePortfolio into your classes.
All right, thank you. And I'm Jennifer Fairchild. I'm an associate professor in the Department of Communications. Specifically, I teach in Communication Studies. This is my 10th year at EKU, and it's going to be my 6th year using ePortfolios. So, before we begin discussing ePortfolios, I just want to be sure that all of us are on the same page regarding the definition of what an ePortfolio is. So the definition that Clint and I are using in our discussion of ePortfolios today is, and I quote, an ePortfolio, which stands for electronic portfolio, is an electronic collection of evidence that shows your learning journey over time. Portfolios can relate to specific academic fields, or they can relate to your lifelong learning. And now I'm going to quote one of my favorite articles from Watson et al. In 2016. You'll hear me quote it a lot today. By way of general summary, and I quote, ePortfolio pedagogy provides a set of practices that are platform agnostic. So remember that, platform agnostic, and utilize a range of broadly available technologies. They are constructed within a framework for organizing learning, not as a prescription for a single end product. And they are designed to be owned and developed by the student learner with guidance from faculty and other educational professionals, end quote. So I want to start with a little bit of history regarding how I started teaching the capstone course and when I started using ePortfolios. So way back in the fall of 2012, that was the first time that I started teaching the Communication Studies capstone course. That's a course, I'm sure, whatever discipline you're in, you have some sort of capstone experience for your seniors before they graduate from your program. Well, in 2012, at that time, I began working with Dr. Rusty Carpenter, who's here with us today, and Dr. Sean Apostle, who is no longer with us, but at the time, not that he has passed away, just let me say, Sean, in case you're watching this, I know you're still with us, but you're at Bellarmine, right? Okay, you're not at EKU. So Sean was the communication coordinator for the Knoll Studio at that time. So we began with a very simple introduction to ePortfolios in my classroom. In fact, that semester, Sean and Rusty only spoke to my students twice because I was new teaching the class, and you know how you are when you're new teaching the class. You think, I just can't give you any more time. I just have so much stuff to cover in my class. So I was still that way with the capstone in 2012. So we only had a beginning, an introduction to ePortfolios, and then we gave students lots of out-of-class work. And then Sean and Rusty came in once more towards the end of the semester to say, show us your finished product. So we didn't have a lot of time, as far as class time goes, to devote to the ePortfolios at that time. And I really, to be honest, I didn't expect great strides in design from my students, knowing that they were working outside of class on their ePortfolios, and they had very little direction. My fault as the instructor, since I didn't devote a lot of time to it, but they didn't really know much about ePortfolio design. And you know how students, they value things that have points or grades attached to them. So just to give you some perspective, at that time, the total of my capstone class was 400 points. But the ePortfolio was only worth 20 points. So I wanted my students to see that it was important enough that I assigned some points to it, and I wanted them to take it seriously, but I didn't assign a whole lot of points to it. I think that my expectations were pretty low. And in 2012, ePortfolios had not yet been declared a high-impact practice in teaching and learning. But thanks to my collaboration with the Communication Center on campus, the Knoll Studio, and my colleagues there, I saw the value of having my capstone students reflect on their learning and their practice and their journey before they left EKU. So just to clarify, because you may have received a handout about high impact practice, so when I'm talking about high impact practice, I'm also quoting Watson et al.'s 2016 definition, which states, and I quote, "The phrase high impact practices was appropriated to denote institutionally structured student experiences inside or outside of the classroom that are associated with elevated performance across multiple engagement activities and desired outcomes, such as deep learning, persistence, and satisfaction with college." So don't we all want that for our classes, to have those high impact practices? And I want to further quote Watson to say, quote, "Compare with their peers, undergraduates who participate in at least one of the high impact practices, or HIPs, officially approved by the Association of American Colleges and Universities, generally devote more effort to such educationally purposeful activities as spending more time preparing for class and interacting more frequently with their instructors and other students about substantive matters. HIP participants also report getting more feedback about their performance and are more likely to apply and reflect on what they are learning, which tends to deepen and integrate their learning," end quote. And after listening to that quote, isn't that what we want for our students, no matter what discipline we're in? So I continued using ePortfolios in my capstone class every year that I taught the class, and I will be teaching it for the 6th year this upcoming spring semester. So as I mentioned, the first year, 2012, I gave students the potential to earn 20 points on their ePortfolio, and we spent 2 classroom sessions on it. Over the years, I gradually learned the value and the importance of devoting class time to ePortfolios, and I gradually increased not only the days of class that we devoted to ePortfolios, but also the point value, because we know the students care about the point value. So the last time I taught the class, it was worth 500 total points, but 100 points came from ePortfolio. So the students saw that I was serious about it and that they should take it as seriously as well. And I also started planning. This was right before Clint was hired. I met with Rusty in the summer, and we sat down and worked on a schedule of how we were going to integrate the ePortfolios into my curriculum and how we were going to collaborate with the staff at the Knoll Studio. I also had a lengthy description in my syllabus, which I won't bore you with at this time, but the students knew from day one this was a project that they were going to be expected to do and to devote significant amount of time as well. And in a minute, Clint and I will talk about the 5 classroom sessions, and we'll go session by session, and I'll tell you how I integrated that into my classroom. But just for now, I want you to know that we did have 6 total days the last time I taught the capstone class. I teach it typically on a Tuesday, Thursday. So we had 6 days of class that were ePortfolio. 5 of them we'll talk about in depth in a minute. And the 6th day was a culmination of their work, where it was a showcase in the greenhouse space here on the first floor of the Knoll Studio, where the students presented their ePortfolios to their classmates and to me and to Dr. Stivers and Dr. Carpenter as well. So remember that HIP definition talking about reflection. The presentation here in the Knoll Studio gave the students time to reflect on their design choices, as well as using their communication skills, which are very important to me in my discipline, to present their work to others. And we will go into a little more depth about those sessions later, so just bear with me. But what I want to say regarding ePortfolios is that I am not a technology expert. I need to make that very clear. I am not an expert in ePortfolio design either, but I am smart enough to know that we are lucky enough at EKU to have the Knoll Studio, and that I have fantastic colleagues who are experts in technology, in design, and in visual rhetoric. Many of them are in the room today, and you're going to hear from them later. And I knew that they could help me help my students, and it was truly a collaboration. So I understand that value and the power of collaboration when it comes to a project such as this, because there's no way that I could have done this on my own and taught all the pieces of the ePortfolio. So we're going to talk to you about the sessions later, but right now I want to transition to Clint, because he's going to talk about his experience with ePortfolios at other institutions, and he's also going to discuss the theoretical framework we use to evaluate the ePortfolios.
Thanks, Jennifer.
You're welcome.
As I said earlier, I did a teaching fellowship at Georgia Tech, and I finished my doctoral work at University of Tennessee and in film studies. So, I've trained in visual design, visual rhetoric. I had a visual understanding with arrangement and color and things like that. But when I got to Georgia Tech, I taught in the writing and communication program there. I was able to teach film in essentially English 101 and 102 classes. But one of the requirements of the writing and communication program was that students participate and complete an ePortfolio. And we used a software system that the university had agreed on, Mahara, which was fantastic. But coming into Georgia Tech, I had no experience with technology. I'm still rough around the edges in terms of negotiating various platforms. That's why Jason's here today to talk to us a little bit about that. Students pick it up quickly, but at Georgia Tech we used ePortfolio as this culminating project in 101 and 102 in terms of grading the students, but we also used it for program assessment. So several times a semester we would sit down and go through ePortfolios, and we were constantly assessing the writing communication program using ePortfolio. That said, I got here and Rusty and Jennifer asked me to join. For the year, I guess, for the first 7 or 8 months that I was here, we worked on the portfolio project. We did the sessions in Jennifer's class, but we pretty much had brought our own framework to the table. Each of us having worked with the portfolio in different ways, had different methods, a different way of going about doing things that we had joined together. However, in the past several months, we all learned that, well, first of all, how many of you guys have considered doing ePortfolio in your classes? What is preventing you from doing it?
Well, I've tried to integrate a little bit just by using Google Docs and Google Drive, so doing this fairly informally. When I taught at Miami University, we used Chalk and Wire, which is a more formalized ePortfolio. But the problem that I ran into there with the package was that type of ePortfolio program or platform seemed to be a lot more aimed at program assessment and wasn't very student friendly. Mm-hmm. So what I like about the Google Drive is that gives a little bit more flexibility to the students, but it doesn't have that teacher interface, right? So
right.
So I guess part of it is that I've not found a program yet or a platform that I particularly like to make it effective.
Absolutely. Who else? You had your hand up?
Lack of a understanding on my part. I have less experience, but lack of an understanding of the different platforms that might be available and to students to use.
We use. Sorry, go ahead.
We use Google Drive and Google Docs as well. Definitely open to other ideas and platforms out there. So, yeah, I'm sorry.
It's okay. We use Wix, and it flows between several instructors and several classes, and I think that's where our issues. We're doing it, but from a bachelor's to a clinical doctorate level, we use the portfolio stream through there, and we want to make it better.
Right.
Mm-hmm. So.
Jason's actually going to talk about Wix later on today. I mean, it's interesting. Studies have indicated that oftentimes instructors, faculty, they want to introduce ePortfolio into their classroom, but concerns about software, tech issues, faculty engagement, uncertainty about, well, how exactly am I going to integrate this into the curriculum in a way that's productive, that it's providing the students with, that's a quality project that is contributing to their learning. But you know, over the past 4 years, if you take a look at the board, C2L Connect to Learning project, there were a group of people who, you know, deeply invested in the ePortfolio field, joined together and did a 4-year-long research study with 24 different institutions across the United States. And the purpose was kind of to respond to you know, the various questions and the apprehensions that instructors had that were preventing them from introducing ePortfolio. But in doing the research study, they also kind of hammered out or nailed out a theoretical framework that since we've learned about this framework, we've aligned our project with as well. But we'll get back to that later. Anyway, they nailed out this theoretical framework called the Catalyst framework. And you know, just as the other HIPs have frameworks or models to follow in order to you know, to lead to a quality product and to ensure that instructors are doing, you know, whatever that HIP is well. The Catalyst framework too ensures that, you know, when done well, ePortfolio is doing these various things. And if you take a look at the handout that I gave you from Ainana Gambino. Hey, Jennifer, will you hit me up there? I want to briefly go through. Please.
That was mine, so let's see.
Please.
You say it worked when we practiced it.
It's going to happen. I feel it.
I feel confident.
Well, okay.
Well, no, wait a minute.
There you go.
Jennifer, would you mind hitting the lights a little
Just say
bit?
well. Well.
Jennifer, would you mind hitting the lights a little bit? This graphic here is representative of the Catalyst framework. And I'm going to go through you know, the various parts of it just to give you an understanding that, like, hey, here is this framework that is absolutely fantastic. And along the way, any questions you might have about ePortfolio, you can go to the framework to get your questions answered. To begin, in the center with these central circles, you can see that I've got highlighted here. This is called the learning core. And the Catalyst framework suggests that there are 3 levels of ePortfolio initiatives need to adhere or engage with these 3 levels. First, active engagement of students, faculty, or advisors, student affairs, staff, etc. The people who are shaping core student learning experiences. Also, programs and majors, departments, the crucial organizational units around which campus life is most often organized, and then finally, the institutional culture. The broad campus-wide mission, policy, stakeholders, and culture that structures and conditions educational practice. So this framework applies both to on the micro level to the instructor and the student in the classroom in a single class using ePortfolio, but it also envisions like ways to introduce ePortfolio into the institution so that scaling up campus-wide, there is consistency, lining up with student learning outcomes. The framework is making an effort to introduce ePortfolio into the curriculum at institutions. Most importantly, we have these 5 intersecting sectors here. Pedagogy, it's the one that you guys are probably most common with, and it's the sector that lines up most with the 10 other HIPs. It's just the theory and practice that guide the use of ePortfolio to support and deepen student learning, including practices related to ePortfolio for career and advisement. So, it focuses on not only the instructor's pedagogy within the classroom, but also outside of the classroom, interacting with other units on campus, just as Jennifer, Rusty, and I, Jennifer, Rusty, and I are. Professional development, second, the active processes such as workshops, seminars, online tutorials, and institutes designed to help faculty and staff learn about ePortfolio technology and pedagogy, and more effectively advance student learning and growth. The key to ePortfolio is that it's something that can't be done alone. There are other campus units that are able to help. The Knoll Studio, because of the connection with teaching and learning, the relationship with other programs and departments on campus, the framework suggests that in order to do ePortfolio well, it's important to have a central teaching and learning based facility on campus that instructors, administrators are kind of flowing through to keep the communication open about current practices and things like that. Outcomes assessment, the ways that classes and campuses use ePortfolio and authentic classroom work to support holistic assessment of courses, programs, and general education outcomes. Technology, the choices that individual teachers, classes, programs, departments make about ePortfolio platforms and related support mechanisms that can have a profound impact on the shape and success of the ePortfolio initiative. And then scaling up. Planning, building, and evaluating an ePortfolio initiative. It's just the role that those faculty members and instructors who are ePortfolio leaders in the way that they're working with students and other faculty to make the connections that can help to catalyze a larger change across the campus with ePortfolio. So these 5 sectors are all connected and overlap with each other. However, what's crucial is, as you can see from the perimeter, inquiry, reflection, integration. Each of these 5 sectors at every moment need to be balanced and overlaid with what they call IRI. And the IRI is simply inquiry. It's just pedagogy that involves asking questions, examining evidence, and solving problems for students. Inquiry with the ePortfolio can be understood as investigating their own learning. It also relates to professional development with faculty, examining the professional development practices that are being put into play. It's something that crosses from student in the classroom to faculty, so that we're constantly all investigating our teaching and learning. Reflection, it's crucial having arranging for class time for there to be reflection among the students, and then also the faculty who are doing ePortfolio to section out time to reflect on their own professional development and their pedagogical practices. And integrative learning, which involves connecting learning across time, space, and discipline, and developing the capacity to transfer knowledge and skill from one setting to another. So if you take, essentially that's the theoretical framework, and I understand that it sounds confusing. You can hit the light, Jennifer. The key, though, is that the 24 institution 4-year study, out of that, the Catalyst framework was developed. Well, this book by Einon and Gambino, High Impact ePortfolio Practice, what it does is takes that Catalyst framework and it provides a chapter that addresses each of these 5 interlocking sectors in the way that inquiry, reflection, and integration are connected with each of those 5 interlocking sectors. So, you know, it is theoretical, but once you immerse yourself in the text, it becomes quite easy, because the way that practice in the classroom and what you're doing, the way that it is or is not adhering to or aligning with these elements in the framework, it makes it very easy to make adjustments and to, you know, when something's not going right, you take something specific, you go to the framework, and it's easy to resolve, like, you know, problems that you might be finding in your classroom or with ePortfolio, you know, as a whole. So, 2 incredible sources, the website, which I'll show really fast. We don't need to turn that on. But if you go to the website, it's listed there on the board. So each of the 5 sectors: pedagogy, professional development, outcomes assessment, technology, scaling up. You tap on each one and you go in, and it's really fantastic because it goes into each of the 24 different universities who participated. You get you know, classroom materials, learn about whatever practices various institutions were participating in, and it's not like enormous D1 or R1 institutions. Schools of various sizes and locations across the U.S. You get stories, case studies, resources to help you with each of the 5 sectors. Let's see. So these are some of the schools that participated, some of the partners. Anyway, the point is that it's an excellent resource if you're interested in ePortfolio, and perhaps most importantly, is you know, they say the originators of the framework say that it's not something you can do alone. So communicating with others who have a framework in place to help you, people helping with software and tech, people helping with visual design. It's something that you it's a project that you collaborate on in the classroom. So to get back to Earth and hands-on, Jennifer is going to speak a little bit more about her own capstone class.
All right. So as I told you, over the 5 years, I've gone from allowing about 2 days of a Tuesday, Thursday class to 6 days of my class for ePortfolios. So what I've done is I've really looked at my capstone textbook, thought about some things that I could condense, or maybe they weren't life-shattering important if the students learned about that before they graduated from EKU. And so typically I teach the class in the fall semester. So by the end of October, we have covered all the textbook material that I want to cover, and they have taken their 2nd exam of the 2 in the class. And then we spend most of the month of November working on ePortfolios. So I want to talk a little bit about those 6 sessions and what I did and what seems to work. But like Clint said, we're always going back to the framework, and we're always reevaluating what works best for the students. But last semester, or last year when we taught the class, the first day, we're always over in the Knoll studio. That's just a given. We're going to be here because their creative juices are flowing when they're outside of the Combs building, which is where I teach. So much more fun to be over here than in college. You guys are laughing because you know it's true. So, you know, they have whiteboards and all kinds of fun stuff here. We still have chalkboards, so there it is. But on day 1, Dr. Carpenter led the first workshop where he asked the students to design an ePortfolio prototype. And this day was on purpose. It was very low tech. We did not use any technology. The students had big pieces of white paper and markers and crayons, and they just designed what they thought an ePortfolio would look like. We wanted them to think about the process before they got into the technology. And then the second day, our colleague Jason, who's going to be talking to you in a minute, he actually taught the class that day, and he introduced students to software where they would be able to use the software and create their ePortfolios. And you'll hear more from Jason just in a minute. And then the third day, Clint led this session. So do you want to talk about the elevator speech, Jenny?
Oh, was that the elevator
That was the
speech?
day, yeah.
With that session, just a brief lecture about elevator speech, because one of the objectives that Jennifer had for her students was to have like a kind of a welcome or introduction on the first page of the ePortfolio, where you could click on the link and the student was able to introduce him or herself, kind of talk about their career or their academic career, what their larger career goals and objectives were. So we spent some time knocking down a 30-second to a minute elevator pitch so that they could include that on the front page of their ePortfolio. Was that also the same class session as the design principles?
I think so.
Yeah, and in addition, we discussed design principles. Again, visual rhetoric, contrast, repetition, alignment, and proximity, the use of color and font in their ePortfolio, just basic visual design elements, so that when they were considering what choices to make and how to present themselves to a specific audience, they could be very careful and calculating in how they went about promoting themselves to more largely the business community that they were aspiring to be a part of in their ePortfolios.
And we always had homework, because obviously you can't just create an ePortfolio in those 6 Tuesday, Thursday sessions. So at the end of every session, we would say your homework for the day is. So by the time we got to classroom days 4 and 5, we felt that we could turn them loose, and those were actual workshop days where we said, tell us a goal, something you want to accomplish by the end of class. So they weren't just out there in the Wild West. They actually had an idea and a vision for the class period. And then we would check back in with them before the class ended to say, did you accomplish this? Were you able to fix the formatting? Were you able to think about your design choices before the class ended?
And that was just an element of the inquiry, reflection, integration, sectioning off this space for them to consider questions that we had come up with, time to think about their design choices, and then coming back to explain in a social setting, why not they were going to be going with certain decisions over others.
And then our last day was the showcase that I had mentioned previously that happened here in the Knowles studio, which I think is very important. I had the students dress business professional. We used some of the screens that roll around that are downstairs and that are used for a lot of the consultations here in the studio. It was a great environment because they were in the greenhouse area, which people are coming in and out. They need to learn how to deal with those distractions and still be able to present themselves professionally. We even invited people who were here for consultations. If they wanted to watch the presentation or chime in, they were absolutely welcome to. So I think that helped my students present and communicate clearly under pressure. And I took notes that day, and I wanted to share 2 quotes from these capstone presentations, because when we were asking the students, once again, thinking of reflection, to reflect on what they did, we would all, Clint, Rusty, and I would definitely ask questions. Their peers would sometimes ask questions. Strangers might walk by and ask a question that they had to answer. But one student, we were asking her about her design choices, and she said, I can show you better than I can tell you. So she went back to her ePortfolio to show us, which to me, that right there reiterates the high impact practice, the reflection, being able to show us their work and their learning journey. And then one student said during his presentation, I really like the idea of an interactive resume. and he was really excited. He saw it as a resume, something that he could put for an employer as a link on his hard copy resume and say, look, to find out more about me, go to this interactive resume. So he was really excited about the job search and being able not just to hand the one-page resume, but to have something that would give him a leg up in the very competitive job market. So now, if our technology continues to work, we chose 3 examples, and we'll call them good, better, best, that came from my class. So we have a few here to show you. Okay, let's start with this one. So this is one of my students from last semester, and we'll call this one good, because there's some material on it, but for the most part, and I'm scanning through this rather quickly, but see, hers is pretty much just, hey, I put my resume online. So, yeah, go ahead.
Are these just web pages essentially?
Yes, these are web pages.
Okay,
exactly.
I'm sorry.
That's exactly right. That's what Jason will talk about that too. So any tech questions, feel free to ask
Okay.
that. But yeah, this is, you can see we used Wix, is what we used as well. Yeah.
All right, now, this is a lack of knowledge about it all, but when you go and interview, would the student actually use this and like pull up their webpage or send it ahead to whoever their employer? In healthcare, they don't necessarily do this, so that's what I'm
Right.
asking.
Different
But
discipline,
in
yes.
business, you would actually send this, and this would be,
On the top of the resume is what we advise.
Uh-huh.
So you would have your name, address, whatever information.
and then the website with this.
The website right
All right.
below.
Thanks.
So
Okay.
that way, we're hoping the employer would check that out beforehand.
Along with that, something I've noticed on, not Interfolio, what is the, the social media for job search?
LinkedIn.
LinkedIn, yeah,
Yeah.
LinkedIn.
Mhm.
LinkedIn and Monster and some of those others, they have spaces now where job searchers can put up their personal website on there too. So they've got their resume on there, but they've also got that link. So as more businesses that use those, that's really useful for them.
Thanks, okay.
So yeah, it's a
Thank
great
you.
way to make you stand out, at least in the communication field, where sometimes people say, what do you do with that degree? This is a way we can say, look at all the experience and the relevant classes I've had.
And in the classroom, in terms of evaluation, we provided the rubric that we used to, to assess the student work.
Yeah. So that one was pretty good. And then we'll call this one better. I like it because look, she has a professional headshot. So it's not just, here's my senior composite picture from my sorority, but here's my headshot, which is what the other one was, no offense. But see, and here's her video that Clint was talking about earlier. Hannah stressed so many times over these because she wanted to make sure that they were the same diameter, the same size. She spent a lot of time working on that.
With the light blue background,
Right.
light blue background, and the white font on top of it, it obstructs readability, I think, or it hinders readability. So, despite the time she spent in
on
terms
it,
of
yeah.
design principles,
And sometimes we would ask them, why did you pick blue? And she's like, I just like the color. So that was the design. We were wanting them to say, well, it represents who I am, it represents EKU.
So
No,
oftentimes they'll fall
it's
into
like
the trap
color.
of, rather than presenting in a way, they forget that they're not the primary audience.
Right.
So readability is crucial, and so that's
Yeah.
a challenge always.
So she put some of her, she debated about this, she put some of her political involvement, and we warned her, some employers may love that you work for Rand Paul, some employers may not give you an interview because you work for Rand Paul, so just be wary, but she was adamant that she left it on there, so that's why she's in the better category. And here's best, and here's a student now, he actually was a paraprofessional for the Center for Career and Co-op. A lot of our communication studies students get those jobs when they're undergrads. He now works for the Center for Career and Co-op, and he is one of the liaisons who works with businesses to bring in co-ops for our students. So Kennedy actually used his ePortfolio in his interview and to get hired. And I think his is professional. He's got his maroon shirt on, so it looks very EKU driven to me. He's got his resume under his education, his experience. So I really like how you scroll through parts of his resume, his skills. So very nice. I like his. And once again, it's not like super fancy, but it gets the job done. And the design was clean, clear, and concise. And speaking of that, I know that we're close to being at an hour. We've got about 20 minutes left, and I want Jason to have time to talk. So Jason was integral into helping us with the ePortfolios. I could not have done this in my class without Jason. So thank you so much for agreeing to talk today.
No problem.
Record of it. All right, so Wix. ePortfolios are basically they're websites. That's what it is. That can sound scary at first. It gives images in mind of like people hunched over keyboards with screens of HTML flowing. It's not really like that anymore. There's a lot of really good, easy-to-use tools for creating websites that are very user-friendly, and it takes care of all that back-end HTML, CSS stuff that's pretty scary. I know a little HTML, don't know much at all about CSS. I don't need it. I have 3 websites now, several domain names. I've used Wix, I've used Weebly, I've used Squarespace, I've used WordPress. They're all the same thing at their heart and soul. They're website builders. Wix is a particularly friendly one, and you can scale it up based upon how complex and how involved you want to be with it. I've used it for a business site, I've used it for a personal site, and so it's really easy, and there's a lot of features in there that students may take hold of later on. Your more entrepreneurial-minded students may really like it, and they might continue to use it in the future. Do notice with all the examples, they're still up, and so that means those students have not unpublished their websites, so you can find them at a URL. And yes, they do go very easily on a resume. They go on a business card, a link at the bottom of an email in your signature. They go very easily in all those places because it's just a URL location. So Wix, I'm going to look at Wix in particular. It's a very easy to use one. I've already signed in, so you would just need to create a quick account, and I'm going to show you how to start a new website. So these are just some example sites. So you can have more than one website on your account. Was that what you were going to ask?
Do we have EKU have a license to it?
It's free.
Oh, it's free.
Yeah. There are features inside that you can pay more. So right there on the screen, upgrade to premium, save up to 45%.
So EKU has no affiliation with it?
No affiliation whatsoever. It's completely independent. Lots of people use it for lots of different purposes.
There's lots of freeware out there that
Yes.
you can use.
WordPress, I've used.
Yeah, WordPress.
Yeah.
You can do the same thing. I think importantly, if students want to use it as a resume, they may want to pay for a year of the service to get the ads taken off if they're doing that. But as far as what they're doing for your class, that's not important.
They
Exactly.
can make it private, public facing. They have the option of deciding who can see it.
Do you have to pay for that part of it?
Well, you can sort of make it private. It's more like you're unpublished and not on the web, or you are published and on the web. You can't lock it to certain people. That feature itself is just part of Wix. You can unpublish your site at any time.
WordPress, you can lock.
Yeah, WordPress. Some of the other ones, there's pros and cons to each of the website builders. What you do get involved in money for, high traffic sites need more space on servers. They need higher bandwidth. I don't think any of your students will have to worry about that. Not going to be flooded with thousands and thousands of visitors.
Come on.
I mean, if they would, that'd be awesome. But you also you can get into payment areas when you want a domain name. For example, our test sites from the students, or this one right here is nullstudioeku.wixsite.com. And so that's kind of an indicator that it's a Wix site. It's one of the freemium plans. It's not bad. It's great for the purposes of a course. But I do suggest if students want to carry it on into the future, it's like $12 a year to register a domain name. I mean, it's a really good idea. I love to use our very own Dr. Carpenter as an example because there is somebody out there that owns russellcarpenter.com, and it is not him. And so it's sometimes a good idea to own your own domain name, especially for students who might be going into a more public field. Also, especially academics who want to get a name known, business professionals, potential, writers, people like that may want their own domain name, and Wix makes it very easy to register that, and it's very cheap. And then I think with the other models, I want to say it's $15 or $20 a month. It can range to get some of the higher grade plans. But whenever you're ready, and it doesn't matter what plan you're on, you can create a new site simply by selecting Create a New Site. It's going to ask what kind of website do you want to create, and what this is directing you towards. They're templates. That's what it's wanting you to look at. Right here is a portfolio and CV1. And so if I click on that or any of them, it's going to ask how you want to do it. We want to choose a template. That's one of them. Or this other option, which I would not suggest. It's not very user-friendly. It's like a AI thing. And then it directs you to the template section. Pick the portfolio and CV website template you love. It makes it very, very easy, but it also makes it sort of a trap in the sense that you will spend hours looking at templates and being like, I don't really like that one. I wish I could use this other one. But then you don't want to change anything because it sort of breaks it, and the content's already there. They look pretty, but sometimes it's best to just start off, especially if you're teaching this, start off with a blank template, and that's there on the left. So right here is, go to blank template. You can get it so blank that it's literally starting from scratch where you add the elements. We don't have to go that far. All of these are just examples of the layout. So if I just click on one of these and click edit, it's going to take me to the website editor. And here we go. And this is a great way to start because you can now start moving around anything, changing anything you want. It's extremely user-friendly. There seems to be a lot of options, but that's just part of it, and they're not hard at all to learn. So, for example, that banner image up there, it's just the default. If you just click on it, if you click on any of these elements, it gives you more options. I can change the strip background. There's a layout option. You can stretch it or make it thicker. I'm just going to change it. It pulls up these free images that you can just do. They're generic. Any of them, you just click and it'll change it. You can also, of course, just click on image here, and it's going to take you to some of this here where you can not only license images from big stock, but more importantly, you can take the images that you've uploaded and easily just click one, click change background, and it's done. Might take some fiddling, of course, with, when it comes to the ratio of it and the stretching out, it'll, of course, zoom in. So it's going to change the image a little bit, but if you start with an image that will work for that application, then it's best, it'll look best. Everything else, it just is click and edit. It's that easy. Name a site. You can easily adjust it to whatever you want. Oh, look at that. I wrote too much. And so now it starts to rearrange the elements. That's because it's very responsive. And so you can now, so if I close this, it will show me all my text, and it's automatically adjusted the boundaries of everything to fit it. You can also, up here at the very top, there is a preview. So if you're like, does that really look like what I think it looks like? You just click preview, and this is what it would look like if you went to this website right now. And you can scroll, and it's very plain, but that's sort of the point. So the students can learn how to design it. They can use those techniques that you're teaching them and go from there. And all these here on the home, about the services, the contact, they're all different web pages as well that you can adjust every single one. If I switch back to editor, it allows me to, again, edit any of these pages. There's even a little icon up here, a little smartphone icon, where you can edit the mobile view. So if someone is visiting your website on their phone or tablet, it has this responsive editor already built in, so you don't have to worry about everything being rearranged and looking horrible. Because in traditional web building, you have to take that into account. Sometimes people will build a website that's only designed for desktop or laptop view, and then if someone looks at it on their smartphone, it's completely garbage and mangled, and there's elements everywhere. So Wix is very full featured. It's very easy to use. It does take some time to explore, to kind of flesh out everything you want. I would definitely suggest to anybody, just build you a Wix site. Just build it. Get hands-on knowledge of it, of how it works. Like there's this addition option over to the left. Adding text, adding images, galleries, slideshows, buttons, boxes, strips, shapes, videos, music, social, contact stuff, menus, lists, lightbox, blogs, a store, and then, ironically, more. So there is all kinds of stuff that you can add, and it's all about how you want your students to use it. If you want them to use it as an online resume, it is very, very good at making it an online resume.
So, Jason, with those tools, if we wanted to do an online portfolio that was showcasing student work, say they're using this to post some of their work from the semester, or maybe from multiple courses across multiple semesters, what would you recommend in terms of some of these tools that we could use to do that? That would maybe make this look more professional than, say, just have a bunch of independent Google Docs, which is kind of what I end up doing. So what would you suggest for that?
So they're building it across classes.
Well, I think it might be useful. I think some people might be looking for that. I mean, I can think of that would be really interesting if we could get on the English side, getting that going between 095 and 101 and 102. You know, if we can get some instructors doing that, for example, or maybe expanding it on.
Yeah, it's very similar to a traditional portfolio for like art students, or I think even in my education program we did one. What I would suggest is maybe adding web pages. So you've got this menu bar down here. You can make any of these drop-down menus, for example. So if you want to click on, I don't know if it's in the preview. Oh yeah, so that's a good example. So under services, there's then gallery. So you can make it like that so that someone can go and select on the individual courses, and that would be especially good if it's more of an internal facing tool, so they're not worried about employers seeing their very course specific work, because that might be a little weird and might not want that either, but especially for an internal facing program entity, it'd be very good for that and very easy to sort of build this up.
It's interesting that you asked that question, Don, because the argument's out there now that ePortfolio, like I think 53% of students who attend college in the U.S. say they have participated in ePortfolio in some way. There's this belief that it's going to replace transcripts, that students will accumulate and assemble their learning across classes over their time in school, and that will essentially serve as, for transfer students, like, look, this is what I've done, so that administrators are able to see and see immediately what classes students have done, the work that they did. And so, that cross-disciplinary or cross-class, it's something that people are talking about right now.
It's actually required in the doctorate program for occupational therapy, and I went through it. So I have a Wix site, and the way that they addressed that was they had themes, so it might be clinical reasoning, and I would reflect, and I had one Wix site with a bunch of pages, like you said, and then I would reflect my clinical reasoning grew because this, and then here are some assignments or some projects or some community service, whatever it was, professional development that I did to demonstrate how I grew my clinical reasoning through this program. And then I had PDFs, like artifacts that you could click on, and the PDF would bring up a PDF of an assignment that I did or a project or a presentation.
So yours was internal facing?
Well, it was, on Wix, and then internally they had we did internal themes, and
But it wasn't published to the.
I mean, it was on Wix, so it's published.
Yeah, you do
I mean,
have,
you could
have
pull
to
it
be
up.
careful because you can't, with Wix, you can't build something that is locked out. So especially if you're worried about FERPA, things like that, if it's on Wix and if it's published, anybody in the world can find it and look at it.
I thought you said you could make it a private.
Not on Wix. You can unpublish it, so it's just simply off the web. But then there's not. I don't want to say there's not much point to that, but then no one can look at it at all unless you go into your account to edit your site. With some of the other tools out there, you said WordPress could do it.
Mahara could do it. I mean, Mahara through Georgia Tech, it was institutional, so everybody it was connected to their GT accounts, and so it was withheld from being public facing. But instructors and people and administrators within the writing communication program were able to see it in order to do assessment.
Wikispaces too. We use Wikispaces here in the Knoll Studio for staff training modules, and so you have to add someone's email for them to gain access to the Wikispace, and inside there's whatever content that you want to develop. But a lot of the reasoning behind ePortfolios, of course, is to project to potential employers and build a platform for yourself. And there's speaking of platform, there's blog elements as well. So students can definitely make it a living and breathing website if they wanted to.
I think one of the issues is we all have kind of unique needs and purposes.
Yeah.
This may not be squarely for my program the intent, but I like the idea. So thank you.
Yeah, no problem. And if again, I run the Teaching and Learning Media Services team, so we collaborate with faculty members. So if anybody wants more in-depth discussion on Wix, because this is just a very brief scratch-the-surface overview, I'm more than willing to work with anybody.
And as Jennifer said, the Catalyst framework and the work of C2L and that Einon and Gambino did in the High Impact ePortfolio practice book, it's platform agnostic. So it doesn't matter which platform you're using. Everybody needs to make adjustments and has particular needs. It doesn't matter. The ePortfolio framework is something that you can adhere to no matter what your interests or concerns are.
And we want to thank you all for being here today, and we'll stick around if you have questions, but I know your time is precious, so if you need to leave, that's perfectly fine too. But thank you so much. Please sign in before you leave as well. Thanks again.
Thank you.
Thank you.